At the family reunion, my brother looked me dead in the eye and said, "You don't really fit in anymore. That's just how it is now." My mom stepped over, gave my shoulder a little pat like she was smoothing out the sting, and said, "Still, thanks for handling all the arrangements." All I could manage was, "Of course." That same night, I got on the phone with the event vendor and started pulling the plug on everything. Canceled the equipment rental, scrapped the grill delivery, and removed my name from the insurance coverage. By 9:17 the next morning, the fallout had already started. The grill never showed up. No tables. No sound system. "Dude, what happened?" I sent back one line, disengaging from a place I was told I don't belong. At 2:33 p.m., my dad left a voicemail. I still haven't been able to bring myself to erase it. "You don't belong anymore," Mason had said, casual as anything, shoving chips into his mouth like he hadn't just taken a wrecking ball to my chest. I was standing there holding a tray of barbecue chicken I'd spent the morning grilling myself. My shirt was drenched in sweat. My back was screaming after dragging heavy equipment around since sunrise. And that was the moment he chose to say that. Not a single "thank you," not a hint of gratitude, just that cold sentence, "That's just reality." He shrugged like he was reading the weather. I tried to speak, but before I could get a word out, Mom stepped beside me and laid her hand on my shoulder. She wasn't even looking at me anymore. "Still, thank you for booking everything, sweetie," she said in that quiet, polite tone. "You really pulled it all together." Then she just drifted away, already reaching into the chip bowl Mason was hoarding. I stood there, locked in place, while my siblings laughed by the rented photo booth I had arranged and paid for. One of my cousins even tripped over a speaker wire, a speaker I'd rented, and not a single person looked my way. I forced a smile, murmured "of course" under my breath, and kept moving. That night, while they posted group shots online with captions like #FamilyFirst and #ReunionLove, I was on my phone undoing everything. Every invoice still pending? Cancelled. Every contract I hadn't closed yet? Revoked. By 9:17 the next morning, the group texts came flying in. "Where's the grill? Anyone seen the tables? What happened, man?" I responded with a single sentence: "Disengage from a non-belonging." Later that afternoon, around 2:33 p.m., my dad left me that voicemail. I've played it more than once, but I still haven't deleted it. Growing up, I didn't get to be the kid. I became the family's unofficial grown-up way before I had a legal ID. Mason? He was the favorite, charming, golden, always sliding out of messes with a wink and a smile. He got drunk at 16, wrecked our dad's car, and somehow got rewarded with a new phone for Christmas. I forgot to thaw the chicken once and got a long speech about responsibility and being the dependable one. So, I made myself dependable. By 20, I was juggling a full-time job, night classes, doing dad's taxes, and chauffeuring mom to her physical therapy appointments. When Uncle Joe got laid off, I was the one who handed him $2,000. Never saw a dime of it back. Didn't even bring it up, because that's what you do for family, right? Over time, that helper role hardened around me like a second skin. At first, I thought they actually saw me. Mom used to say, "We don't know what we do without you." But gradually, those words dried up. Appreciation turned into expectation. Then expectation turned into silence. Eventually, it just became entitlement. I didn't even realize it was happening. Not all at once. It crept in quietly, like fog. One day you're helping because you want to. The next, you're the guy footing the reunion bill, planning your cousin's baby shower, and co-signing your sister's second bakery loan. You're not a person anymore, you're an ATM with arms. That's how the reunion landed in my lap. Back in April, Mom called sounding overly cheerful, like she was reading from a script. "We're thinking of doing something fun this summer. A big get-together. Like the old days." Then came the kicker: "You're just so good at organizing." Translation? "You'll handle everything. We'll show up and enjoy it." And still, a part of me wanted to say yes. It had been years since I'd seen some of my cousins. And maybe, just maybe, if I pulled this one off, if I made it perfect, they'd finally see me. Not as the fixer. Not as the guy with the wallet. Just as one of them. So I did it. I went all in. Reserved the park, secured the permits, arranged the chair and table rentals, got the grill, the speakers, portable toilets, first aid, even an insurance policy just in case things went sideways. All in, I dropped about $3,800 from my personal savings. I didn't ask anyone to contribute. I knew better by then. As the day got closer, the family group chat lit up, but only about who was bringing the mac and cheese or the potato salad. No one mentioned logistics. They assumed it would all magically appear. One cousin joked, "At least we've got our event planner." I tossed back a thumbs up emoji and laughed along. But truthfully, that one stung more than I let on. The morning of the reunion, I was up at 5:30 a.m. loading my car like I was prepping for a small wedding. When I got to the park, it was empty. Mason rolled in 2 hours later, looking fresh and breezy in a linen shirt, holding 2 cases of soda like he'd just saved the day. "Yo," he said, tossing me a Coke. "You always go overboard with this stuff." I wanted to say, "You're welcome." But instead, I just nodded. People started showing up, laughter filled the air, kids ran around. I fired up the grill, fine-tuned the speaker volume, handed out allergy-safe name tags for the little ones. And the whole time, I kept thinking, maybe this time it'll feel different. Then Mason hit me with those words. "You don't really belong anymore." And he said it like he was telling me the time of day. No malice, no pause. Just that smug calm he's always carried. I stared at him, blinking through the barbecue smoke. "What?" I asked, half laughing. He nodded toward the picnic tables where the rest of the family sat, plates piled high, kids screaming. "You're not really part of this the way you used to be," he said. "You're kind of in the background now. Like helpful. But not one of us." I opened my mouth to answer, but he was already walking away. Then Mom walked over. She didn't look me in the eye. She gave my shoulder a soft pat and whispered, "Still, thank you for booking everything." That "still," it lingered. Like she'd heard what Mason said. Like maybe she agreed. That's when it really landed. I wasn't just being overlooked, I was below that. I'd become the foundation they built everything on. The scaffolding that holds up the show but never gets a mention. I was the guy who made the party run, then quietly disappeared before the cameras came out. It hadn't always felt that blatant. But standing there in the July heat, it all snapped into place. The birthdays I skipped because someone needed help. The vacations I never took because another crisis popped up. The dead silence when I lost my job. Not a single, "How are you holding up?" from any of them. Mason had said it straight. I didn't belong anymore. Not in the family they had built without me. And maybe I never really did. But this time, I wasn't just going to swallow that bitter pill. This time, something in me was already shifting. What if I just pulled the plug? I opened the list of rental confirmations on my phone. I still had access. Still had the authority. It wasn't too late to make them feel the absence, not of me, but of everything I had always given. By midnight, I'd made the calls. Canceled the bookings. Voided the contracts. Pulled my name off the policy. They wouldn't notice I was gone. But they'd notice the missing grill, the missing tables, the quiet where the speakers should have been. The next morning started off quiet. Then came the unraveling. Right at 9:17 a.m., I was at home sipping black coffee and scrolling the news on my phone when the first ping hit the group chat. "Hey, anyone know where the grill is?" Rental truck never showed. A few seconds later, no tables either. Did the vendor bail? Then Mason chimed in. "Where is everything?" I set my mug down, slow and calm. My phone lit up with one notification after another, buzzing like a slot machine. No speakers here. No tents. Are we still on? Did someone screw up the time? What's happening? I waited. At 9:34, my aunt called. I let it ring out. At 9:38, my mom tried. Her voicemail came through almost immediately. "Sweetie, did something go wrong? Please call me." At 9:41, Mason again, direct message this time. "This is a disaster. What did you do?" I finally replied. One sentence. Disengage from a non-belonging. Then I muted the chat. By noon, the wheels had fallen off. Photos started popping up in the group thread. People scrambling. Plastic lawn chairs dragged out of trunks. Aluminum trays propped on the back of someone's SUV. Toddlers whining in the heat. Folks arguing by an unlit grill that hadn't been delivered. My cousin Tommy posted a photo with the caption, "Worst reunion ever." I didn't respond. I just slipped on my shoes and went for a walk. At 2:33 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Voicemail. My dad this time. I didn't pick up. But I didn't delete it either. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. Lights low. Phone face down on the kitchen counter. Letting the silence just exist around me. I wasn't angry anymore. Not exactly. I was just done. Done carrying the weight of a family that never made space for me. Done being the dependable one, the one who keeps things standing, while no one even remembers I'm in the room. Done being useful instead of loved. 2 days went by before anyone knocked on my door. Mason. Of course. And he didn't knock politely, he pounded on the door like it owed him money. The second I opened it, he pushed his way in like it was still his space. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he snapped. I raised my eyebrows. "Nice to see you too." "You humiliated everyone," he barked. "Mom's been crying since Saturday. People are saying it was the worst reunion we've ever had." "Well," I said with a shrug, "I'm honored they finally remembered I exist." He didn't even acknowledge that. "You had one job," he said, jabbing a finger. "You were running point. And you bailed." "I didn't bail," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I exited." "Same thing." "No," I said. "There's a difference between failing and choosing to stop fueling a system that treats you like a tool." He looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Genuinely lost. I let out a breath and walked past him into the kitchen. "Tell me something, Mason," I said. "When's the last time any of you asked how I was doing?" He didn't answer. Not what I could fix. Not what I could plan. Just me. Still nothing. "When I got laid off last year and was barely scraping together rent, did you check in? When Mom needed help covering her deductible, who paid it without blinking?" Silence. "I did. And no one even said thanks. But sure, she cried last Sunday when her meatballs went cold." "Stop making this about you," he snapped, voice sharp. I turned around, finally tired of playing calm. "It is about me. It's been about never being allowed to make anything about me for the last 10 years. His face changed. The edge softened just for a second. I saw it, that flicker of doubt. I was the wallet. The organizer. The emergency contact. But never the son. Never the brother. Never just family. "And you said it yourself, I don't belong. So I stopped pretending I did." He scoffed. "So that's what this is? Revenge?" "No," I said, quieter now. "It's called boundaries." For once, Mason didn't shoot back. He shifted awkwardly, fiddling with the seam of his sleeve. Finally, he muttered, "Mom's not doing well." "She seemed fine patting my shoulder like I was some distant neighbor," I said. He opened his mouth to respond, and then shut it again. I didn't give him the chance. "You should go." He stood there for a moment, unsure, then finally turned and left. I thought that might be the last of it. But the fallout wasn't finished. 3 days later, my mom showed up. And she didn't come solo. Dad was with her, which said a lot. Usually I got vague texts, cryptic voicemails, or guilt trips relayed through Mason. But this time, they both showed up. In person. At my door. I let them in. Mom's eyes were puffy. She looked like she hadn't slept. Dad stood stiff as a board, arms crossed like he was bracing for a storm. "I don't understand what's happening," Mom said first. "You're not answering anyone. You left us hanging." "Did I?" I asked, calm but direct. Her lips started to shake. "We didn't mean to make you feel excluded." "Don't do that," I said softly. "Don't twist it into forgetfulness. You didn't forget me, you just stopped seeing me." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "You didn't have to embarrass us," he said quietly. I turned toward him. "And you didn't have to co-sign Mason when he said I didn't belong. You didn't have to let me bankroll the entire event without saying a word. But you did." He flinched at that one. I went on. "Do you have any idea what it feels like to show up for everyone, every time, and still be treated like the help? Like I'm just the guy in the background, making sure everyone else gets to have a good time? Silence. I stepped back, folded my arms. I'm not asking for an apology, I said. I just want you to understand something. That door you all shoved me out of? It doesn't swing back open just because you suddenly noticed it closed. Mom started crying quietly. So what now? You're cutting us off. No, I said. I'm just done sacrificing myself for a seat at a table where I was only ever allowed to serve. Dad didn't speak. His jaw clenched, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. They left after 10 minutes. I stood by the window and watched them walk back to the car. Neither of them looked back. And for the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not anger. Not sadness. Not some hollow victory. And that's when I understood. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. After that conversation, my life went quiet. Strangely quiet. At first, it felt like a hole had opened. The absence of noise. A duty. A guilt. No more 8 p.m. calls about forgotten bills. No more last-minute family chaos that somehow always became my problem. Just stillness. At first, it was eerie. Like something was missing. But then, it started to feel clean. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was clear. Like a fog lifting after a long, endless storm. I didn't realize how loud and heavy they had all been, until the weight was gone. The first week, I half expected someone to reach out. Mason. Maybe one of the cousins. But nothing. The group chat went cold. No one tagged me in anything. No vague posts. No pointed memes. No attempts at guilt-laced humor. I had been erased. Just like that. At first, yeah, it hurt. To be that disposable. That easy to cut out of the narrative, like I'd never been holding it all together in the first place. But then came clarity. No more 7 a.m. texts asking for favors. No more Venmo requests labeled, just until payday. No more emails dressed up like affection but really just instructions. You're the strong one. Can't you just handle this? And for the first time in over a decade, I began making decisions purely for myself. I painted the bedroom wall I'd ignored for a year. Bought that absurdly overpriced bookshelf I always said was too much. Cleaned out my closet. Found a drawer stuffed with receipts, all those family expenses no one ever paid me back for. I burned them. One morning, I took a different route to work, just because I felt like it. Stopped into a bookstore. Spent an hour wandering. Walked out with a novel I wasn't sure I'd finish, just because the cover made me pause. Small things. But they stacked. Became a rhythm. And in that rhythm, I started remembering who I was before I became the one who fixed everything. I went back to therapy. Sat across from my old therapist, who blinked when I told her, I finally said no to my family. And I meant it. We talked about boundaries. About control. About financial trauma. She asked me when I first learned that my needs came last. I told her about Mason's high school graduation. How I skipped a state-level school competition because Dad said, your brother's day matters more. That was the first brick in the wall. And this time, I didn't cry telling it. I just let it hang in the air like a scar that no longer ached. I started reaching out to old friends. Most of them I'd ghosted over the years, always too busy, always caught up in some family thing. I sent long messages. On the distance. Apologized. Some replied immediately. Others took a few days. But almost all of them were kind. We met up. Had clunky, awkward coffees that slowly turned into real conversations. And for the first time in forever, someone asked, so, what do you like to do on weekends? I didn't know how to answer. So I started exploring. I signed up for a painting class. I'm terrible, truly impressively bad, but I laughed more than I had in months. Went hiking. Alone. Sat at the top of the trail, phone off, just breathing in the quiet. No expectations. No emergencies waiting on the other end. And then, out of nowhere, the message came. It's Natalie. I know this is random. But, can we talk? Natalie. Tom's ex-wife. We hadn't spoken in years. She'd vanished after the divorce, quietly, completely. Mom said she was unstable. Mason called her manipulative. I remember thinking, that didn't quite fit. But I stayed quiet. Like I always did. Now, here she was, texting me like a signal from another world. She asked to meet for coffee. Said yes. When she walked into the cafe, I almost didn't recognize her. Not because she'd changed so much, but because she hadn't. She just didn't have that haunted, cornered look anymore. She looked peaceful, centered. She smiled. But her eyes were cautious. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, sitting down. "I know it's a little weird." We sat in a booth. She ordered tea, stirred it 6 or 7 times before finally speaking. "I heard what happened," she said. "With the reunion. With your family." I stayed quiet. She looked at me carefully. Then leaned in a little. "I need to tell you something. When I left Tom, no one believed me. They called me crazy. Said I made it all up." She took a breath. "But you sent me a message. One text." I frowned. "I did." She nodded. "You said, 'I believe you. I'm sorry no one else does.'" It must have been quick. A quiet gesture. Probably sent late at night after another one of Mom's Unity rants. I had completely forgotten. Natalie smiled, but her voice cracked a little. "I never forgot it," she said. "You were the only one. And now, seeing you walk away from them, it gave me strength. Because you were the one holding them all together. And if even you could say no, maybe I wasn't the crazy one after all." My throat tightened. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small flash drive. Slid it across the table. "I think you need to see this," she said. "It's from Mason's old laptop." She told me Mason gave the drive to Tom when they briefly worked together. "I'm guessing you didn't know they ever worked side by side?" My stomach dropped. "No, I didn't." She slid the flash drive across the table. "It's a lot," she warned. "I don't know exactly what's in there. But I found stuff under your name, invoices, authorizations, insurance claims." I blinked. "Insurance?" "Yeah," she said. "For family events. Documents with your signature on them." "But I never signed those," I said, confusion creeping in. That night, I plugged the drive into my laptop. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. A few documents, an old resume, a folder named Event Planning. Inside that folder, I found a list of vendors I'd worked with. But there were duplicates, my name, my phone number, and routing numbers that were all different. I opened the related email threads. And there it was, reimbursements redirected under my name without my permission. Adjustments filed to vendors. Overcharges claimed. Funds quietly rerouted. Always in small amounts, just enough to stay under audit radars. Thousands of dollars. Over 5 years. All under my credentials. My liability. If anything went wrong. If a vendor sued. If there was an accident. I would have been the one holding the bag. And Mason knew it. That's why he told me, "You don't belong anymore." Because the moment I stopped cooperating, I became a threat. Until then, I thought the betrayal was just emotional. Now, I realized it was criminal. The next morning, I called my lawyer. The day after, I filed an inquiry with my insurance provider to correct the records. I sent notices to every vendor involved. And I sent one message to Mason. "You crossed a line. This isn't family anymore. It's fraud." He never replied. But a few days later, my lawyer told me something surprising. Mason had already begun trying to reverse some transfers. He knew I had evidence. He knew I wasn't just walking away, I was pulling down the curtain. After I sent that text, I never heard from Mason again. Not when the bank launched their fraud investigation. Not when my lawyer filed official complaints. Not when the State Insurance Commission opened a review into the family event reimbursements. He disappeared. It was almost poetic. The man who once told me, "You don't belong anymore," now didn't belong anywhere near my finances, my future, or my forgiveness. Weeks passed. Then a month. Then one day I got a letter. Not an email. A real letter. Thick envelope, no return address. Inside was a printed note. No greeting. No sign-off. Just 4 words, centered on the page. I didn't mean to. I laughed. Not because it was funny. But because it was exactly what I expected from Mason. No ownership. No apology. Just enough vague regret to make it about him, not about the damage he caused. I shredded the letter. My lawyer kept pushing forward. Mason, facing multiple counts of misrepresentation and insurance fraud, eventually signed a private settlement under mediation. He returned just under $23,000 and permanently gave up any claim to my name, accounts, or records. It didn't make up for the years, but it gave me closure. And sometimes closure isn't justice, it's just escaping with your dignity intact. My parents? They slipped back into their usual roles. Mom cried. Dad stayed silent. She left voicemails in the middle of the night. Whispered apologies, like guilt could only be spoken in the dark. I don't know what to say, but we're still family. Please don't forget that. I didn't respond. Dad, to his credit, sent a check. A real check. For $2,000. No note. Just his signature and for everything in the memo line. I never cashed it. I framed it. Sometimes when I forget how far I've come, I look at that check. To him, a check was enough to fix years of silence. But for me, it bought freedom. I changed my phone number. Stopped checking the old family email threads. Made peace with the fact that some people grieve losing control, not losing connection. I dove deeper into therapy. Not to untangle them, but to reconnect with me. I started working out again. Not to punish my body, but to reclaim it. I invested in a small piece of land outside the city. Quiet. Private. Enough space to build a little studio or workshop someday. I began painting seriously. Not for likes or Instagram. Just for me. My cousin Rachel, one of the few who didn't cut ties, stopped by last week. She brought banana bread and a six-pack. We sat on my porch, watching the wind ripple through the trees. You seem different, she said. I am, I replied. She nodded, sipping her beer. You know, I always thought you were the strong one. I wasn't, I said. I just had to be. She smiled softly. Well, now you look free. And I was. Free from proving my worth. Free from playing the helper. Free from carrying shame that was never mine to bear. Even Natalie, the cousin's ex-wife who gave me the flash drive, stayed in touch. We've become strange friends. Bound not by trauma, but by survival. Sometimes we swap stories. Other times we sit in silence. Both understanding what it means to be the scapegoat who finally stepped away from the fire. A few months after the settlement, Mason tried once more. He emailed me from a burner account. Said he was in a better place. That he missed the old times. That we should grab a beer. I didn't reply. But I printed the email. Put it with the letter and the check. Not out of spite. But as proof. Proof that walking away wasn't abandonment. It was protection. From a family that took everything until I had nothing left to give. From a brother who betrayed me the moment I stopped being useful. From parents who confused obligation with love. The last time I saw any of them in person was at mediation. Mason looked smaller somehow. Not in body, but in spirit. His voice barely carried. His eyes didn't meet mine. He signed the papers without protest. As I stood to leave, he looked up. We're still brothers, right? I paused, then said, we were just roles in the same broken play. And I walked off stage. Then I walked out. But I don't miss them. Not the group chats. Not the obligations. Not the quiet resentment. Not the way they made me doubt my own feelings. What I have instead is real. Friends who check in without asking for favors. A therapist who tells me, you're allowed to rest. A body that doesn't ache with unspoken grief. A life I built not in reaction to them, but in the space they left behind. And that, I've learned, is the legacy I get to leave. Not bitterness. Not revenge. But peace. The kind you don't wait for. The kind you take.